morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening from, and welcome to 1% Better, where we take a look at hidden stories in sport. I'm Xylon and I'm joined, as always, by Dr. David Lipman. You've struggled the last few weeks with the doctor's question, so I've got an easy one for you this week. It's post-Easter weekend, long weekend, everyone's in a good mood. Made it easy for you, mate. You're going to know this one.
We'll see.
What is the only internal organ in the human body capable of regenerating itself?
Liver.
Easy. Give me some interesting insights about the liver.
So it regenerates itself both in terms of like if you damage it, right? So you'll see this, you'll get damage to it and then it'll sort of recover a little bit. But then also you can donate liver and it will regenerate. So they cut out a good portion of your liver and then give it to somebody else, and then that regenerates in them, and then similarly yours regenerates. So you end up with like, it's not just about like refreshing, I guess. It also, can sort of regrow to its size. So it's quite cool.
The liver stores glucose overnight for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, so there are two stores for glucose. Glucose is stored as glycogen, so it's long chains of glucose packed together. There are two stores. There is the muscles, so you can store in all of your muscles, and then there's the liver. And the liver is very short term, and it's pretty limited. That's kind of the store that we worry about because it provides glucose for the brain, and there's a large portion of fatigue associated with that. So yes, depleting muscle glycogen can be an issue, but depleting liver glycogen is usually a bigger issue. In many ways. And liver glycogen can help top up muscle glycogen, which is kind of why we want to preserve muscle glycogen because you don't want to use the liver glycogen there. But muscle glycogen can only act locally. So it goes into the muscle, gets stored there, and then is used there. It can't be moved around. So you can end up with, let's say the end of a marathon, you are fairly depleted in your glycogen stores. You'll have very low liver glycogen stores, never zero, because we need to survive. So you have liver glycogen stores that are quite depleted and probably muscle glycogen stores in your legs that are quite depleted, but you might have a good amount of muscle glycogen in your biceps left, depending on how you run.
Store them in as guns, keep them loaded, locked and loaded.
Yeah, well, it depends on what you're carrying and how you run. I've certainly seen some people who might not have much muscle glycogen left in their biceps after a marathon, but yeah.
So what I'm hearing you saying is the last few weeks when you haven't got the doctor's question right, your glycogen in your liver stores might have been almost depleted.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, we are supported by Precision Fuel and Hydration. They are a long-term partner on this podcast. I must tell you, because I'm obviously not training, I am now 12 weeks post L5 S1 spinal fusion surgery. I have a stack of nutrition that is almost expiring. So my wife decided to donate it to some very deserving athletes here who don't have means to it, but are very, very talented. What I did notice, though, she's not donating the chews. That she's keeping for herself.
Those things are gold, mate. Those things are gold dust. It's, I am happy they've shored up the supply chain because, quite a while ago, they were struggling to keep those in stock, unsurprisingly, because they're so good. So, it is unsurprising that she's keeping those for you guys.
It's also going from strength to strength. I saw an Instagram story from a long-time friend I have sort of lost touch with. I saw he's running Two Oceans ultra marathon this weekend and put out his nutrition plan, and it was all precision fuel and hydration. And that would not have been the case a few years ago. So it's great to see the company going from strength to strength. If you would like to test them out, we do have a discount code, 15% off your first purchase. That discount code is BETTER2026. We also have a link in the show notes down below that will automatically apply that discount code. And they have a wonderful service where you can hop on a call for free with one of the experts to talk you through fueling your next event. You can catch a calendar date in their diary in a link in the show notes down below as well.
Speaking of Two Oceans, mate, have you done Two Oceans before?
I have done Two Oceans before. Do we have a sound effect? We don't have a sound effect for Two Oceans. We can use the code sound effect.
Well, I just think that a lot of listeners only hear you as like the cripple guy. So it's important for people to know, you did do Kona, and you did do Two Oceans as well as Comrades Marathon last year. Or maybe not. Wasn't last year. It was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
I must say,
So,
that memory did pop up, and my friends who I made the trip with and stayed with and ran with sent us photos of it. And injury is such a hard thing, man, because you got to mourn that I'm unable to run I'm unable to run at all at the moment, obviously, but unable to run those distances. And you mourn what was. And Two Oceans was one of the best runs I ever had in my life. Like my friends who I train with, they're bloody Kenyans, and I'm nowhere close to their level, but I almost beat them on that day. Like if that race was 5Ks longer, I would have caught them. It was just one of those races where you barely you pasted like I pasted like an adult from start to finish, and you finished it feeling good, and you caught hundreds of people in the last 5K. It's just one of those days, and I'd give anything to go back and relive that, man. It's just, yeah, but a good memory. That's what we live for, is to make good memories.
well, you're welcome, mate. Given I coached you that, but no, I think it's a good point to bring up. Is like, looking at our listener demographics, there are certainly some young listeners. You guys are on the up. Crack on, enjoy it, go hard. The older listeners or people who are aging may have seen their best athletic days behind them. And perhaps, one of the reasons people take up endurance sports, I think, is because you can succeed and do more and see those targets exceed previous bests as we age. But the point being, like, at some point you've done your fastest or you've performed your best, and being able to appreciate the value of getting older, and then perhaps reset standards, right? Like, I look at my father-in-law, he's not running faster anymore, but he's getting better in his age group, and he's stoked. So yeah, there's certainly that sort of thing.
Also adjusting to where you are now. So I actually wanted to tell you, I've started a new morning routine, and I don't think that's something I would have necessarily done had I not had this injury. I find that immediately in the morning, my nervous system kicks into gear, and I'm almost stressed immediately. And then I had to look at my morning routine. And I'm not saying this is the cause, but traditionally I would wake up and I would make a beeline for the kitchen, like coffee straight away. The last few days I've adjusted it slightly. I would wake up, I'd drink a glass of water, and then I would do the stretches that the bio has given me. So just activating the core, stretching the hamstrings, stretching the calf muscles, which apparently is very important for your back muscle to help your back as well, stretching the hip flexors, etc. So doing that for about 15 minutes, and then I've been taking the dog just for a 10 minute walk on our property, and then I come back and coffee and breakfast. And I felt I don't know if it's a placebo effect or not, I felt an immediate change in my mood in the mornings now and throughout the day as well. And that's not something I would have probably implemented maybe had I not had these injuries. So as much as I'm mourning ultra marathons and really missing doing Ironmans and those kind of things, it's finding the positives through this journey.
Yeah, I was on a panel recently for a company I advise called Performer. It was about founders endurance. There was a lady on there talking about her morning routine, and it's like, there's a lot of fetishization of morning routines, thanks to like Tim Ferriss and the likes. But just thinking about how the morning is and how it sets you up for the day. And I'm not like gonna Huberman out here and tell you to do all the things and do this, but if you can, and it's a luxury to some degree, if you can have an amount of ownership over your morning versus letting other people impose the schedule in your morning, so like not checking emails, not checking your phone, those sort of things, I think just giving yourself a little bit of time can really help just go into the day a little bit better and a little bit less stressed out. Now, we've all had mornings where we get up, like we're recording this pretty early in the morning. And this morning I certainly woke up and I was like, all right, got to get onto it, got to check that last thing, do this thing. Like, so, and then those are okay. But at the same time, still kept my morning. And, coffee is a big part of my morning, but it's a much more relaxed coffee than yours sounds. As part of when I'm making the coffee, I'm stretching. And I found that to be, a nice thing to do, just to sort of occupy myself, but also just get a bit moving in the morning, right? So I think the point being is like really owning the morning. And I think part of that is also like not letting your phone dictate to you. So I sleep with my phone in a different room, and I couldn't be more supportive of people doing that. And if you can't work out how to wake up without your phone as an alarm clock, then I can't help you. It's like, use your phone to Google how you might use an alarm clock that isn't your phone. And then also having my phone on Do Not Disturb overnight, so that when I pick it up, it doesn't have any notifications on it or anything like that. And then I
Yeah,
choose when it comes off Do Not Disturb
same. Yeah,
actively, so that
yeah,
you can then go, oh, actually, now I'm ready to start my day, and I do this, and I turn it on, and I've got a WhatsApp, and I got an email, and I got a whatever. Okay, well, let's engage with the day. So I try and do that. But anyway, privileged position to be in. So yeah, but I do like what you're doing. I do think the stretching is going to help you get moving in the morning because you'll be stiff after a night's sleep. So even just getting moving a little bit, whether it's stretching or even some activations or whatever, and then walking the dogs is also great, mate, in the morning. I think it's good.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. What's happening with your Achilles? Do you have an update for us?
Yeah, I mean, so was away for the weekend. I think the interesting factor here, so I've kept my load similar. I actually dropped my running load a little bit last week, but did a bunch of walking while I was away over the Easter weekend. And there was a little bit of niggle in the Achilles. And what it just told me that we tend to think about load on something like an Achilles as how much, running and plyometrics am I doing? But there's certainly a load from life. And that's a more like lower intensity of load, but a longer duration of load. And so I probably did, let's say, double the steps I would have normally done over a 3-day period. So at that stage, you go, well, hang on. There's obviously an increased load here. And so I'd cut back the running a little bit. And, it's fine now. But I guess the point I'm making is there was a couple of days I was like, oh, there's a bit going on there.
Yeah, no, I hear that for sure. I actually discovered that when I did Kona, funny enough. So you can hear the dog barking in the background. I'm busy. That's a Kona sound effect. Kona has this nation of parade thing where you parade 2 days before the race with all your nation and your flags, and there's a vibe in it. And I stupidly did it in flip flops. What do they call jandals in New Zealand, slops in South Africa, instead of in appropriate shoes like running shoes. And I remember my Achilles acting up a little bit, and it made me realize how normal life's load has an impact on that. Because obviously my training load would have been high at that point as well. So.
Well, just let's get a quick update on the dog situation, mate. We talked about Bentley and Oliver and the loss of your dogs, sadly. So what's going on? What's barking in the background there?
The barking dog in the background are my in-laws who ditched me here with the sick
mate, it's
dog.
rude. It's rude to call your in-laws dogs, mate.
They've been called worse, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm looking after their dog, and my wife's away in Cape Town, so I'm alone here. Hence, there's no one to shush the dog. She's barking at monkeys now, been under attack here by monkeys. Coming brazenly into the house and like a stereotypical animal, stealing our bananas. Unbelievable. So that's what she's barking at, hopefully chasing them up a tree right now.
It's funny, mate, because people are often surprised at they often think things like there are kangaroos that people ride to school in Australia, those sort of things. And to be fair, there can be kangaroos in the backyard in parts of Australia. There's no question about that. But the point I'm making is no one really thinks there's monkeys coming into people's houses and stealing stuff in Africa, and yet there is. It's quite funny.
It's real. I took her for a walk on her property this morning, and she sniffed out 6 in Yala. And Yala's like this beautiful African buck that she found in the bushes, and about 6 of them hopped out. It's beautiful to see this morning. We are supported by Stride, running power meters. Now, Stride had a speed project which happened, and the women's record was broken by a Stride team. What happened here?
Okay, so the speed project is a race from LA to Vegas. It is off-road, or rather, you make your own course. It's like we start in LA, turn up in Vegas. We'll see you there for the party.
Wow.
Make your own way, and it's it's quite far. It's like 280 miles, 300 miles. There's teams that do it. There's individuals that do it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this year, a lot of records got broken. Individual records got broken. I think, and certainly the women's team got broken by Project Stella was the team name. This is the team that Stride was supporting. I think they're a Nike team. So they did it. They did LA to Vegas in 30 hours and 19 minutes, which is for 280 miles, which is, and I did the math on this, roughly 9.33 miles an hour, or averaging 625 miles, or roughly 4 minutes per K. So
wow.
It's pretty crazy. So that was, as I said, LA to Vegas, any route allowed, it's team relay. So I think there's data coming out about this, or there will be. So we'll keep an eye on this in the next couple of weeks. So I'd be interested to see that data, particularly how fatigue manifests over time. And we've talked about some of the Stride data before, where your data will get more homogenous and less variable. You'll probably see changes in some of the metrics, like you might be a little bit less, have less leg spring stiffness as time goes by, as you fatigue more. So yeah, I'm keen to see the data, really keen to see the data. But there's also an interesting component of these people are, to run 4-minute Ks, they're probably tagged in and out, right? Or 625 miles, they're probably tagged in and out, running something like 6 miles or 10 Ks at a time. It's probably a bunch of them, and they just rolled that. Right, that's how I would do it. Is go, let's roll, 70 to 80% of like max for an extended period of time, because you don't want to roll too quickly because you want a long enough break. But if there's a team of 6 and you're all rolling roughly 40-minute 10Ks or 40-minute 6 milers, then you end up with almost 3 hours off. So it's kind of like 40 minutes on, 3 hours off. And it's like a really nice amount of time to eat, get a bit of a sleep if you need, and crack on from there.
I wanted to ask you, my Stride delivery arrived yesterday and there are 2 boxes. Are those 2 single pods for 2 different pairs of shoes? So I don't have to move it from shoe to shoe? Or are those 2 pods that go on one pair of shoes?
The second one. So this is what the difference between the duo and the single is, right? So with a single, you get a bunch of metrics, but if you want to look at your gate kinematics, which is what we're interested in, asymmetries, then you need 2 pods. So
Okay.
you want to look at left versus right. So you need both of them capturing data.
Okay, perfect. I need to unbox them. Looking forward to digging in and getting started, man. If you'd like to check out Stride, we do have a direct link in the show notes down below. Let's get to some community shoutouts. Welcome to all new listeners. If you haven't subscribed to this podcast yet, and listened to like a riveting conversation about how we used to run ultra marathons and how we used to not have Achilles injuries, subscribe now, man. You're not going to get better content anywhere else in the world. You can also engage with us on Strava. We do have a Strava group of 1% Better, and we're on Instagram at 1% Better Pod. You can also send us DMs there if you have any questions for us. We also have an email address down in the show notes below. Who have we heard from in the last couple of days?
So we're going to talk about the Stawell Gift, big race in Australia, and it's a full track festival, which is on grass. So it's like, I don't know if that's okay to call it a track festival, but it is a big athletics festival, let's say, but only running. And Nida, previous guest from May 2024. So we do have a back catalogue for when we were running as well, if you want to hear about us running and those things. So Nida was back. He was episode 11, so early on in the piece, talking about how to build out your shoe rotation, your shoe quiver, if you will. And Nida's a keen runner himself, Michael Nitschke, and he got second in the 2 mile at Stawell Gift. So I've seen Nida run at the Stawell Gift. He's been running there for years, so he's done really well there. So yeah, cool. Congratulations, Nida. Really, really impressive, mate. And I guess we'll talk about this a bit more later, but every race there is it's old pro running. So people used to bet on it. And that was like the whole thing. There was this pro running big circuit, and this is like probably the most famous race of it. This is big money. Not so much in this race, more in the 100 meters, which we'll talk about later. But every race here is handicapped. So Nida would have been coming off a fairly far back mark because he's quite a good runner. And then there's, he could be racing a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old who's off a front marker. So he ran the 2 mile there. So Nida might have run, let's say, 2 miles is 3,200 meters. So maybe Nida runs 3,100 meters, and maybe there's like an elite guy behind him. And then there's, a bunch of kids in front of him that he has to go chase down. So it's quite cool, particularly in the distance events where pacing's a big part of it. So I really liked watching these when I was there watching it. So, yeah.
As there was Sha'Carri Richardson, which we're going to talk about in a short while, she was there in that handicap race. And if you've not seen those videos on social, we'll put it up on our Instagram stories after this, man. Unbelievable.
I saw Steve Magnus post about, can we watch all 100 meters like from this view? With that like sort of behind them but above them from a drone. Yeah. So good. So much better, particularly when it's a handicap race. Because then you need to have context for it.
Yeah, they started doing it in cycling in RCS races, which owns the Giro d'Italia and also Ronde van Vlaanderen, which you're going to talk about. And you just get a sense then of how fast these athletes are going, because from a motorbike camera in the front, you don't really get it's not justified how fast they're actually going, whereas the aerial view does that.
It's also cool to see the courses. I know they did it for the time trial on the Tour de France that finished in Nice, where they sort of followed them. And it was because it's quite a windy, beautiful course. It was awesome watching with that drone. I was like, we get more of this, please. Way more of this, particularly with the advent of video games. Like that's a viewpoint that's very familiar in video games. So I think it would engage a different audience. But we also had some results from a previous Strava poll. And this was interesting to me. We talked about this at the time. You were talking about saying basically like it doesn't matter if they're recreational drugs. It's kind of the comment you made. I can't remember what it was with reference to, my apologies, but I put up the poll, and we put up a poll every week on Spotify for Spotify listeners with respect to the episode, something that came up in the episode, and they're open for 2 weeks and you can respond there. And we had some interesting responses here. So the poll was, recreational drugs are less bad than performance enhancing drugs from a doping and sport perspective. That was the question. more of a statement, to be honest. And then I sort of write and they're often tongue in cheek, the responses you can get. So 50% of people said, of course. And when I say tongue in cheek, I mean like the narrative behind it, because it could have just been yes and no. So it said, of course. And then the second one was nope, banned is banned. And that was 37.5% of people. And then 12.5% of people said it depends. So I thought that was quite interesting, that a lot of people thought, yeah, they are different. So, and just to review for people, the reason something is banned is it has to fit 2 of 3 criteria. One is it enhances performance or has the potential to enhance performance. One is it's against the spirit of the sport, and one is it may damage health. It's harmful to health or may harm health. So you could argue, I mean, and I say this all the time, they're suitably grey, that they could be argued many ways on many substances. The other thing to remember with the banned list is it's not sport specific for the most part. So it's agnostic to that. So something like beta blockers, for instance, which help shooters because they help slow your heartbeat so you can shoot between beats, and would do absolutely nothing for a 100-meter sprinter, no advantage, maybe even a disadvantage, they're still banned for the 100-meter sprinter. So it's quite, it's an interesting topic.
Wow, interesting result. I would not have called it to go that way.
Neither.
We have a correction to make from last week's episode. I'm really annoyed by Shane Evans, man. He got good, and then he's dragged us into he's getting got. We talked about the Australian French trail running. He sent us information about a trail race, and turns out it was an April Fool's joke. If you listen to last week's episode, what did Shane give us an update?
Yeah, so he's our Australian French trail running correspondent, although his comment on Spotify, and he sort of DM'd us as well, apologising. It was a nice episode, lads. My sincere apologies, but looks like this little newly appointed Australian French trail running correspondent may have been sucked in by a French poisson d'avril, which is April Fool's. It actually means, I believe it means fish of April in a direct translation, and provided you with incorrect information. I will now hang my head in shame and very regretfully renounce my prestigious position on your 1% Better podcast. Now, in the end, it appears as though they have chosen the team based on race GPS data, calculated approximate finish times, and prior race results. So what we talked about last week before we were stitched up was there was an issue. People did go off course in the French Trail Running Championships as a selection race for the European Trail Running Championships. We talked about the potential for them to rerun the whole race or rerun a portion of it, and actually they just use the GPS data, which is probably the best way to do it for injury risk and all those things, and then performance of the team at the European Championships. But I kind of like the idea of setting them off from a position with the appropriate stagger, given where they were when they went off course, and seeing and like letting the race close out, so to speak. But anyway, I just like the idea of that because it'd be interesting to watch. But it's probably the best way to do it the way they did it. So it's okay, Shane. You can remain our Australian French trail running correspondent. We won't fire you. We appreciate anybody sending us information and trying to help us with the podcast.
We also got a listener question in from our chief meme officer, Spencer Lauderbeck. If you are a follower of ours on Instagram, you will see every week Spencer puts some killer memes together based on what we discuss on this said episode. So make sure to be following us on Instagram, 1% Better Pod. Spencer's question is, what is going on during taper that makes athletes feel niggles? Nothing, Spencer, nothing. It's in your mind.
I mean, that's a good take. It's not quite, but it's a good take. So I think there's a couple of things. Firstly, when people start tapering, most people start 2 to 3 weeks out, right? And they start on a certain day. They might do their last long run on a Sunday because the race is in 2 weeks, right? Or you might do, let's say people are starting to taper now for Boston, right? I think Boston's just over 2 weeks out. So it's probably Monday in a couple of weeks. Anyway, so they taper 2 weeks out, and they expect that on day one of taper, right, they're on the last long run Sunday. On a Monday morning, they're going to feel great. It's like, that ain't happening. So taper is 2 weeks long because it's about freshening up over 2 weeks, not about freshening up over one day and feeling good for 2 weeks. So I think part of the issue is that it's a mentality switch. Is like, bang, I'm tapering. Now I should feel good. And the reality is that ain't the case, right? It's going to take some time. And the goal is to feel good on race day. The goal isn't to feel good at the end of week one. The goal is to feel good on race day. So it's important to remember that. And you've accumulated a lot of fatigue over time, and that comes to, sort of got to pay that back, so to speak. So you may feel a little bit worse in that respect. I think some of it's to do with that perspective and perception that I should feel good today. So I think there's part of that. And I just wanted to also say that there's not a lot of research on this. I did some work to try and research it and couldn't find that. But yeah, and then the similar aspect here, I think, is there's an increased awareness because you're tapering. You want everything to feel fine, and you're starting to think about the race. Right, race is in 2 weeks, and I want to be good on that day. So you're starting to incessantly check the weather. You're starting to worry about your sleep, maybe, and you're starting to go like, oh, I should feel good. And any little bit of a niggle, you're sort of hypersensitive to and hyper aware of because you don't want it to ruin your
Mm,
race. So I think
mm.
that's a huge portion of this. Then there's a excuse me. Then there's probably a truly physiological perspective here or aspect here. And again, this is me trying to make sense of it, not research based. But when we are training, particularly as we're training harder and longer and accumulating more fatigue, excuse me, listeners, as we're training harder and longer and experiencing more fatigue, we get this increasing amounts of, let's say, things like adrenaline and cortisol. And again, I don't want to throw around technical words and try and sound smart and, you know, explain physiology in a reductionist terms. And these sort of terms are often thrown around a bit on social media. You do have an amount of those that are normally released for appropriate reasons during exercise. And and there's more of them the longer you go and the harder you go. And part of their role is to prevent things like pain or help manage pain or limit pain. And I think some of the reduction in that and the increased sort of recovery stimulus you're getting, the increased dominance of the parasympathetic system versus the sympathetic system, I think that can drive part of this is where you actually feel a little bit more run down in that because your body is devoting resources to recovery rather than being in a sort of more stressed state for more of the day. And again, normal, not like none of this is bad. Like, don't let it be pathologized by people on the internet. It's just that's kind of what happens is you go from this, I'm training a lot and I'm very like there's a lot of stress in the system to now I'm recovering and you're devoting more resources to that. So I think you probably don't feel quite as good because there's not as much of that those stress hormones, which then come to bear on race day and you feel great. Why? Because you've got a bunch of these stress hormones. They do help you perform.
Is Spencer running Boston again this year? I know he ran it last year.
He is running Boston this year. We've got a few listeners running it. I took some screenshots to follow up on them. I can't remember off the top of my head who else it is. Either Christian Trumperdach or somebody else. Can't remember who's running London and who's running Boston. I think it might be Christian that's running Boston.
I was
So
just, I was just wondering because this was relevant. The fact that he's asking, like you say, he's right into that taper period now. So I was wondering.
yeah, and quick heads up to anyone running Boston. When you get, I would take some gear in case it rains because good chance it rains. And I'm talking about not just during race. I'm talking about before the race. So bring wet weather gear. Bring something to sit on in the village, right? Because you're going to be sitting on the ground probably. So if it's going to be wet, bring like a plastic bag to sit on or something similar, and go find a fence line. So you sit along the fence. You got something to rest your back on. Relax there, eat all those things, and enjoy the bus ride. It's a really fun bus ride. You catch the old school buses out there, and it's just a good vibe to be bussed to the start line. So it's one of my favorite pre-race ever is Boston. It was really fun. And I had good weather, so that'd be why.
Mate, we need a Boston sound effect for you. I have noticed in the 2 years we've been doing this pod, the how subtly and how coolly and how stealthy you mention that you've done Boston, one of the biggest marathons in this world. And the way you mention is like, oh, it's a Sunday run that I've done, this Friday run that I've done with friends once. We need a sound effect for you, man.
Well,
I'm not
it's
taking this
for
stealth.
the video listeners. There's my Boston bib with its with a medal and a sash thing that I got at one of the shakeouts. So, yeah, I mean, listen, Boston was probably the race. Qualifying for Boston was probably the race I'm most proud of. Is like it took me quite a while. It was quite hard for lots of reasons. Mostly to do with super shoes and me not using them at the time. So I qualified sans super shoes and refused to start using them until I qualified for Boston without them. And then finishing Boston was really emotional. So I'm super proud of it and had a really good day and really enjoyed it. It's probably the one athletic achievement where I was really proud and like really soaked it in versus everything else, which was kind of like, yeah, cool, chop wood, carry water, on to the next thing.
Why
But
was it
also,
emotional?
just a lot of work to get there. So I initially qualified at the Amsterdam Marathon around 2:58:59, having run under 3 hours. And that was like the 2 years or something or a year after the super shoes had started. So that time had come from 3:05 to 3 hours and I ran under it. So I was like, oh, I'm good here. And then it ended up being that I missed out on it. So I was super pissed off because, and again, I wasn't using super shoes at the time. And I was like, all right, I'm going to qualify for this thing and I'm going to not use super shoes until after that. And then COVID hit and all sorts of stuff. So then it was like a delay and I kept training and then went to Rotterdam and ran 2:49. Again, sans super shoes. and was like, I'm in here now. And that was really like, I felt really proud of that. And then, finishing the marathon is always tough, but also I'd been focused so hard on Boston and so much on, that like the ride onto the Hereford and left onto Boylston, like the most famous phrase in all of marathoning, right? The ride onto Hereford, left onto Boylston. So you do that. I think I think Boylston's about half a mile, 800 meters long. So you're about the last, let's call it last kilometer, and there's just people everywhere, and it's unbelievable, and it's like super emotional because with a mile to go, you run under the Boston Strong Bridge, which commemorates the bombing, and like it's just it's super emotional, and I just had the best day. Like it was perfect weather. I ran really well, ran a big PB, was really happy. It was just, it was just great, man. Like I think back so fondly about that race. Part of me wants to go back because I love it so much, and part of me is like, never go back because you'll ruin that memory. It can't be
Yeah.
it can't be good. Like I can't have anything that improves that memory because it's one of those things. And I was so worried about the weather because the weather in Boston could be biblical or it could be great, and I had mid teens, light breeze. I ended up getting sunburned because it's point to point. And so I ran, and I had the sun on my left hand side. So I got sunburned on my left hand side. It was just, it
Yeah,
was a
running
great day.
is unbeatable on days like those, man. So, so special. We got another listener question in here from Brad Huff, a loyal listener to this podcast and a former colleague of ours. Brad says, with all the desire for increased efficiency in cycling and riders putting shorter crank lengths on, so we used to have 175, now riders are going 172.5, some are going 170. Brad asks, is there a neurological muscle memory that inhibits similar recruitment in the new lever pattern? Because I've heard from one previous US Pro champ, Ty Magner, who is now a director at Modern Adventure Pro Cycling, he says both of us feel that when the real high power, high RPM efforts happen, it feels like we can't activate or produce power the same. Is this purely mental or is it real? This is really interesting in cycling that people are using shorter and shorter crank lengths.
Yeah, so I did some research on this. There is research showing shorter crank lengths are more efficient. Most of that research is in novices, but I strongly doubt that Poggy's using short crank lengths because of novices. I'm pretty sure he has that data as well. So I think there's enough smoke and enough fire here. And then there's some pure mechanics and physiology that's part of this. And I think it's important to remember with the body that there are biomechanical and mechanical things that exist, like physics, but then there's also the metabolic aspects of this. So, for instance, people go, this is the perfect way to run. Now, that is true when it comes to mechanics, maybe biomechanics, but not necessarily when it comes to the metabolics of it, because it may be less efficient for you to move that way. So, there's certainly a trade off here sometimes. It's not as relevant in this case, but it's worthwhile mentioning that, right? So, and this is why when it comes to running, coaches aren't good at picking efficient techniques because efficiency is not just about biomechanics. They can see the biomechanics, they can't see the metabolics of it. But so to answer Brad's question, I think there's a couple of aspects here. I think if you've been riding on longer cranks for a long time, you may well develop an efficiency to that. And then as we move away from that muscle pattern, you may be a little bit less efficient, at least initially, again, metabolically and neurologically to some degree. And I think this would be more noticeable in people who have done more work with longer cranks, i.e., people who are a little bit older. Not to say that Brad is old by any means, but these pros, a
He is,
former.
he is old.
We just lost a listener. No, but if you're a former pro, you've done probably 20, 30, 40, 100,000 hours in an old crank length. Now we change your crank lengths and go, this will be better. It's like, well, maybe not, right? And maybe it is a little bit. And these differences are marginal, right? Let's be really clear here. Like a couple of millimeters is not significant. So, if we changed it from 185 to 155, that's a much bigger change. So it's worthwhile thinking about this as you will have the most efficiency where you're most used to it, and it'll slowly cascade out from there, and you'll be less efficient the further we go away from it to some degree. And again, that's not just about the mechanical efficiency here, because the mechanical efficiency says we're probably a little bit more efficient with shorter cranks in that respect. But there's other reasons you're better off with shorter cranks. And again, in the research, so it changes the body position so that you've got a lower CDA, so like less drag. Basically, you're more hunched over. It can improve how comfortable it is, and certainly remove some musculoskeletal limitations at the hip or knee, because you're in a less deep hip and knee angle. So those things are all part of it, right? And certainly from a comfortability perspective, that can be part of it as well. But probably what's happening here, or what we're seeing more specifically, is to produce, this happens in a number of things, right? So we have it in, let's say, breathing, or we have it in heartbeats, or we could have it in this, which is to say we have a desired output. And we can achieve this in two ways: more force or a deeper breath, or a more blood being pumped out of the heart, or an increased number of beats or pedal strokes or breaths, right? So for me to get an output of X, I can increase either of those variables. And they trade off to some degree. And the most efficient spot is the sweet spot between them where they cross over. So what can be happening here, or what we might be experiencing, is at higher outputs, the better strategy might actually be to put more force in, because we can't keep spinning as fast. Particularly as we age, we're not going to be as fast from a fast twitch fibers perspective and a neurological aspect. So it may be that, yeah, when we get to these higher wattage requirements, the most effective strategy for us would actually be a longer crank at that higher wattage. So the question is, where do you make the trade-off given the requirements of your sport, right? So for the most part, you're going to be riding a little bit easier. So yes, you are better with shorter cranks, but the cost of that is at the high end. And as we said last week, sometimes in these cases, there's no solutions. It's just trade-offs. You're just creating a trade-off here. So that would be my take on this.
Interesting. Thanks for doing that research and finding that. That's very interesting. That is something that I've noticed has happened in cycling a lot. So that is great context. By the way, for anyone listening, if you have a question for us, you can DM us on Instagram, or you can email us at the email address below. Send in your questions. We'd love to do a deeper dive with you. Let's have a look at what's come across my desk this week. Some quick bits for you. We mentioned it earlier already. The Stawell gift of our listeners shoutouts, but in the main event, we had Sha'Carri Richardson put on a show. Man, it's one of the best videos I've seen all year.
Yeah, I mean, it's super cool. I've been to the Stawell gift. It is amazing. I went in 2015. It's such a great thing. I would encourage people to go out and do it. It's this tiny town.
Which part of Australia is this? And I asked you, how can they afford to pay Sha'Carri Richardson an appearance fee that they did, supposedly, to show up at this place I'd never heard of before?
Well, so the Washington Post said it's near Melbourne. Crash our tip, not near Melbourne. But the fact that the Washington Post wrote about this, the fact that there's all this media coverage, I guarantee you it's worth their investment. It is the most well-paid race in Australia. It's the richest race in Australia, famously. I think they pay 40,000 Australian dollars, which I think it was about 27,000 US dollars for the win.
That's what I saw, yeah.
And so they probably paid her an appearance fee as well. They probably got a 2-for-1 with her and her partner, Christian Coleman, who came out as well. And they couldn't pay locals to come, right? They couldn't pay Gout or whatever, because it's the middle of it's the middle of the Australian season. So it's not really the season for Europeans and Americans. It is the middle of the season for the Australians. So I think there's a component of that with scheduling and those sort of things. So just to get back to it, it's not near Melbourne. I mean, it's near Melbourne if you don't live in Australia. So there's this thing in Australia, and I'm sure you have it a little bit in South Africa, is like you say it's near the biggest place someone would have known about. So there's a good chance no one knows anything other than Melbourne in Victoria. So you just say it's near Melbourne, but it's actually, 2 hours and 40 minutes drive, roughly, maybe a bit more. It's about 240 Ks or 150 miles. So it's not very close. There are many towns between it. And as I said, I've been there. So we talked already about it. It's handicapped and it's a pro race. So historically you would bet on this. So the goal is you handicap everybody based on their form and their PBs so that they roughly all finish together. And of course that never happens because everyone races differently. But that's the goal. And historically, the handicapping for someone like Sha'Carri has been quite harsh. And I think in the last 5 years or so, they've reduced that harshness a little bit, because what was happening was either people were foxing, like that goes back decades, and maybe 100 years of people foxing so they get a better handicap so they can win it. But more importantly, you had these young kids whose PB wouldn't be that reflective because they're developing so much, right? If you're a 16-year-old sprinter, your development's so crazy that we need to handicap you a little bit harsher than we have been. And so you're having these 16-year-old kids winning thousands and thousands of dollars because they were, improving so much. So that was quite interesting. But I think I think they've changed that a little bit, because backmarkers really win. She's the third person ever to win off 120 meters. So this race could be a maximum of 120 meters, and I've seen people come off 80 meters if they're slow enough. So she came off, I don't think she had that much to make up. I don't think she made up 40 meters on somebody, but she could have potentially had that. But she certainly made them up. And so this is also, just to note, this is on a grass track for those who haven't seen it, and it's a mild uphill, right? So ever so slightly uphill as well on grass. And she had a bit of a headwind as well, from memory. So one thing to note, I think this is quite interesting for Sha'Carri because Sha'Carri, I think 120 meters might be her distance. Now, the reason I say that, she's obviously a 100-meter runner. She doesn't run the 200 for the most part historically, but she's also got a really bad start or often struggles with her start. I hate saying she's got a bad start because she's won a world championship, but she often struggles. The part of her race where she struggles is the start. And so I think 120 meters, given she's not a 200-meter runner, right? Usain Bolt's start wasn't great either, but he was a 200-meter runner. So like that's a little bit different. But for her, she's 100. I think 120 might be a sweet spot for her where her start can be overcome a little bit. She can run over people, but she also doesn't need that speed endurance that you might need in a 200 meter because she doesn't have it. So, and again, smart marketing, get these two people out, get them there. It's obviously going to cost them less to bring a couple out than it would to bring out, two different people. And yeah, this was masterminded by a guy called Jason Richardson, who was a previous winner. So kudos to Jason.
I love this. I love learning about new things. Never heard about this before. That's why I love doing this podcast.
Incorrect. We talked about it a year ago. I remember this because I knew you would say this. I was like, we talked about this a year ago. Let's go pull that audio, mate. We'll put it in there. I guarantee you we talked about it a year ago.
Sometimes I'm here for the podcast, but I'm not always here, if you get what I'm saying. Like, sometimes I zone you out. This time, it registered with me. I think it's because it was Sha'Carri Richardson, and that video is so incredible and so like visually impactful. But let's move on to Collen Kebinatshipi. He joined an exclusive club. Who is he, and what has he done?
So he's the Olympic 400-meter champion. He's from Botswana. This was at the Botswana National Championships. So he is the fourth person ever to break 10 seconds and have broken 44 seconds in the 400 meters. So sub 10, sub 44 club. So he ran 9.89 in the 100 meters with a mile tailwind of 0.8 in the semi and then a bigger one in the final with 1.2. He ran the same time in the semi and the final, which is great. And he's one of four people, as I said, to run sub 44 and sub 10. And you're looking at the documents, so you're going to know the answer to this, but otherwise I would have asked you who the other people were, hoping that you'd at least know that Wade van Niekerk was one of them. Michael Norman and Fred Curley are the other two. Those three, though, have also run under 20 seconds for the 200 meters, which this guy has not done. So, which is really impressive. Sub 10, sub 20, and sub 44 is really impressive.
I forgot that he was the Olympic champion, 400-meter champion. Keep an eye on him. Yeah. See where the next few years go.
He's quite a slight guy, which makes some sense in the 400 meters. Is very strange for a very good 100-meter runner like this. So, quite interesting to see.
And then while we're talking about fast running, what has Kishane Thompson been up to?
So I went back and checked this. We both picked him this year for World Championships hundreds. So I went back and did that research, and it's looking good, mate. So he ran the world's best in the 150 meters. So I'm not sure if it's called the world's best. There's two reasons it would be called the world's best. Often you see that we don't keep world records for odd distances. But in my research for this, there was some suggestion that it's not a world record because the world record was run previously by Usain Bolt, and it was on a straight track, so 150 meters straight rather than having a bend in there. And so that this is a world's best because it's on a bend. So I don't know I'm not sure which one is the case, but there it is. He had a 1.3 meter tailwind. So good enough to help him along quite a bit, particularly as you come into the straight with that tailwind, right? So he ran 14.92. So there's no medals to work it out. That's faster than 10-second 100 pace. And he held that over 150. And that's particularly impressive because, we talked about Sha'Carri being maybe 120 meters is her distance because her start's bad. He's the opposite. He has a great start. So he's actually really good in the 60 meters. And he's done a really good job running 60s and 100s. So he's almost more power, more raw power out of the blocks and less speed endurance. So the fact that he's running so fast over 150 is really concerning for the competition. This says this guy's in great shape at an early phase of the season to come then sharpen up into the 100 meters. So as I said, the previous record holder on the curve track was actually Linford Christie, around 14.97 in 1996, which is probably a product of how rare these races are more than anything else. And he said this could have done it more, and it was more of a training run. So again, pretty scary. And just for the record, Usain had on the 150-meter straight track in 2009 in the Manchester Street Games, he ran 14.35, which is absolute lightning. And again, that might have been, I actually think Usain's probably 200's better than that. And he's probably I always thought he was more of a 2-4 guy, but so be it.
I presume he'll be doing Diamond League. I just had a look at when the Diamond League calendar is. It starts 8th of May in Doha.
Yeah.
And then 16th of May in China. 2 dates in China, 16 May, 23 May, and then Morocco, 31 May. So about to kick off and then Kicks off from
They
there.
basically start in China early season. A lot of people don't do a lot of them. We talked about this previously in the pod, and then as it rounds out, it goes US and then into Europe. So Prefontaine's often one of the earlier ones that people do, and I don't know when Prefontaine is, but it is certainly there. So they're starting soon, though. You're right.
And then the next thing I wanted to talk about briefly, I could not avoid this on my algorithm over the weekend. The Jimmy Gressier keeps delivering. What did he do? Like, as I say, every time I opened up Instagram or something, I'd see his face.
Yeah, Jimmy, high profile guy, French guy, doing really well. So he broke European 5K record, running 12:51. That's 3.2 miles for the record in Lille, which is insane. His kick was insane. I don't know if you saw this. If you caught the video of him, there were sort of a group of four of them, and then he starts turning it up and then kicks away, which is wild. He ran a 2:26 last kilometer, which is 3:55
Wow.
mile, which is 3:55 mile pace. So that's somewhere between my 200 and 400 meter PB paces. Like, just to contextualize it for someone that's like normal or relatively normal. Now, I'm not particularly good at the short distances, but like it is fast. That is very fast.
What happened in the women's race in Lille? Because Cassandre, how do you say her name? Cassandre Beaugrand, the Olympic
Beaugrand,
triathlon
yeah. So
champion. She was also coming up on my feed.
she ran the 10K there, not the 5K. So Agnes and Gedich won it in 28:58, but Cassandra got seventh, ran 30:52, which is a French record by 8 seconds. So she holds the French 5K record, 14:53 from Monaco in 2025 as well. And this is impressive because she's a triathlete. She won the Paris Olympic Triathlon with a run of 32:42, which says to you, firstly, she's got pretty good durability, that she can do a swim and a bike prior to running not a super dissimilar time on probably a course that wasn't quite as favorable. But it also shows that, Alex Yee, Hayden Wild, her, etc., you probably need to be an elite runner these days to make an elite triathlete. Alistair Brownlee as well. So, these people are probably world-class 5K, 10K runners who can swim and cycle, right? And at a high level, I'm not saying that they're bad swimmers and cyclists, but the reality is you need to be a good runner these days.
Interesting. Wow, that's such a good take. I feel like we just glossed over that. I feel like we could do 10, 15 minutes on it. Let's put a pin in that and revisit that, man.
Yeah, sounds good.
We talked in the early days on this podcast quite a bit about Parker Valby and her exploits while she was in college and then heading to the Paris Olympics, but we just saw one of her records getting broken.
Yeah, so again, Spencer Louderback sent this to me, and then I got swamped by it on my social media as well. So it's quite astonishing that this got broken, and it's the context that matters. So this was broken by a freshman. So this is first year in college, and her name is Jane Hedengren from BYU. So she's only 19 at the moment. She turns 20 this year. So she's a true freshman. It's not like she's had like 10 years of doing other stuff, etc. Now she's a freshman. So she's true freshman. She already won the 3K and 5K indoors this year. So she's national champion in the 3K and the 5K indoors. She's now national champion in the 10K, and she got second in NCAA cross country. So
Wow.
that range is insane. So she ran 30:46 to break Parker Valby's 2024 record by 4 seconds. And again, 4 seconds on one of the most hyped college runners. And again, Parker was a senior when she did that, so like 2 to 3 years older.
Which makes a big difference at that age, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a bit funny. Like, the development of women's a bit more non-linear than men, because men are just getting more and more muscle bulk and more testosterone. Women, it sort of depends on things like puberty and how they're adjusting and all those sort of things. So it's just a little bit more non-linear. And then in any college student, you always worry about chaos around them, exams and relationships and what's going on in their life. Like, that can have a huge impact. And it's, we were all 20, and it's a pretty chaotic time of life. So I just, for context, I think, college is hard to predict, but your point's well made in that respect. It does make a big difference to be at least more experienced anyway. But we probably shouldn't be surprised, because she's also the NCAA 5,000 meter record holder. She ran 14:44 there, and this, even though this was her first 10,000, she's obviously got the engine for it. This puts her seventh fastest all time on the list of Americans. So at 19 years old, which is wild, and she's now top 15 all time among American women in 4 distances, according to the USTF CCCA. So she's 10th in the mile, 14th in the 3,000, and 2nd in the 5,000, in addition to 7th in the 10,000. So obviously very she's got high promise.
Let's remember that name. keep up to date with it and see where this goes, man. We have been talking about the sprints a lot, but have I seen that there's been big news in the marathon world?
Yeah, this came out about like not even 24 hours ago at the time of recording. So, World Athletics released a strategic roadmap for the future of distance running, creating the World Athletics Marathon Champs. So, this starts in 2030. So, it'll be normal championships where the marathon is part of it, normal world championships for 2027 and 2029. And then from 2030 onwards, more so 2031, there'll be no more road events as part of the World Athletics Championships. So in 2031, there'll be no road. And to be fair, the only road thing they had was probably the walks and then this, right? So I'm not sure what they're doing to the walks. The walks might die off, unfortunately for them, but I'm not a massive walks fan, but, they exist, so they should have something. But anyway, the Marathon Champs, interestingly, are going to be annual, but it's going to alternate years for men and women. We're going to talk about that in a second. The World Road Running Champs will remain separate. Now, the World Road Running Champs has the 5K, 10K, mile, and the half marathon, right? So that's quite interesting. I think they should probably amalgamate them, but anyway, so be it. Makes it a little bit harder. And it looks like the first city to host this, and I'm really a big fan of this, is Athens, to sort of look at the marathon history and go back to Athens. So it looks like also a strategic partnership to elevate Athens to the highest tier of road running. So it's already got the elite level status and we want to recognize the history there, but it's looking to get platinum level status by 2029, which is the highest level tier. So what I'd like to see, I had some ideas here, but I think you have to alternate men's and women's championships. The reason is because there's too much money to be made elsewhere. So you want to have the prestige of a world championship being rare enough that people want to turn up for it. The problem with this is if you're running it, if men and women are only going to run a couple of marathons a year, you're going to abut and you're going to clash with things like the World Marathon Majors. And there's lots of money to be made there. And
Because because am I correct in saying historically they've not been getting the best marathoners rocking up to the World Championships?
Well, it depends. There's two factors. There's a number of factors. The top 100 are probably all East Africans, and you can only send a couple, right? So let's say you send the top 3 Ugandans, top 3 Ethiopians, top 3 Kenyans. Let's say that's 9. Probably the next 83 best runners are all East Africans that can't go as a result of that, right? So like they're certainly there, and I'm being disparaging a little bit. There are certainly people who are higher up. That the people, Conor Mance isn't out of the top 100. I'm not suggesting. Yeah. It's more of a sort of tongue in cheek thing there. But what I'm getting at is so the top. If you look at World Marathon Major podium, like let's say top 10s at World Marathon Majors, a good portion of them are going to be Kenyan, Ethiopians, or Ugandans, right? Now, there's often in the top 10, there's others, but there's that. There's also the propensity for those folks from Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, particularly at a World Championships, if things are not going well, to just drop out because they're trying to win. If they're not going to win, they don't really care. So they certainly drop out. So you end up with this a good chance for people like Conor Mance to do really well at a World Championships, where he may do less well at a World Marathon Major. And again, don't want to disrespect Conor. He's just a good example that I grabbed at pretty quickly. So there's those aspects. But also, you don't want to clash with the World Marathon Majors and annoy them. You need to work with them. You need to be a partner.
Absolutely.
So if you then go, okay, well, where are we going to put this? You need the American market and you need the Americans running there, because that's a big part of a big part of media. And then similarly, you need the Europeans. So you can't clash with any of the American marathons or the European marathons. So then you basically end up clashing with Tokyo in the first portion of the year, Tokyo, London kind of thing. And so you can't, it just becomes messy. So I think you have to do this every second year. You just go, we're going to sacrifice, one of those every bit, and you probably move it around from first quarter of the year to third quarter, or from sort of spring to fall. Or you say, actually, we don't care about times, which is reasonable. You put it mid-year, and then you let people choose. But again, mid-year may not be good, because mid-year you kind of mess with the spring, and you kind of mess with the fall marathons. So you need to think about where you place it in that respect. If it's going to be at the Athens Marathon, it's probably just going to be part of the Athens Marathon Festival. It'll just clash with whatever it clashes with, at least in this time. I don't mind the idea of moving it around and saying, hey, London's this year's World's Championships, and next year's going to be Berlin, and the next year will be this. So you just move around a World Marathon Major or a tier down from that, which I think is pretty cool. But what I'd like to see is this be amalgamated into something akin to Kona, where we have age groupers qualify for the World Championships. So you kind of have this already. It's just not well done. but you amalgamate those. So every year, men and women who are age group or non-professionals can qualify for the World Championships, and they go. And then there is an elite men's or women's race there. So you kind of have a spectator and a participation aspect to these World Marathon Majors. And you could lump in or roll in the 5K, 10K, mile and half marathon there as well, potentially. Although if you do that, then the same people are probably running the half marathon World Champs as they are the marathon. So there's certainly something to consider there.
Just on Athens, I've actually run the Athens Marathon, and similar to you in Boston, was very emotional finishing the original Olympic Stadium. Man, it was, I don't know, all of a sudden emotions hit me out of nowhere, but that was very, very special. So,
didn't know that you'd run the Athens Marathon. How did I not know this?
really?
Yeah, it's been on my list to do for a while. I'm surprised by this. Okay, well that's cool, mate. I didn't know
It's
that.
a
When
long
did you run
time ago, before COVID, 2019, I think maybe.
Okay.
Just ran it easy with Wendy. Just took it easy. It was very, very cool. Great experience. From marathons to ultra marathons, or many of them, Huang Zhenglong has just broken a Guinness World Record. What record was that?
Yeah, he ran 100 days worth of 100Ks. So 100Ks a day for 100 days in a row.
How is that possible?
Well, it's possible. So we're going to talk about this. So interestingly, listeners might be familiar with Candice Burt. She puts on a bunch of long distance races, the 200 milers, 300 miler now as well. And she does quite a few races herself. And she actually broke a Guinness record. So she did the most consecutive days to run an ultramarathon by a woman. And she did 200 days. I think that might even be the men's record as well. So she did 200 days in a row of an ultramarathon. But that's just more than a marathon. It doesn't have to be much more than a marathon. This guy did 100 Ks a day. So I think in both cases, and I certainly followed Candice pretty closely, she was very active on social media during this, and I sort of kept track of it. I think what happens is, if you think about it, just from first principles, I would have no issues with, even you now with your back, walking a kilometer every day. To just commit every day I'm walking at least 1 kilometer. And no one would think, oh, that's a problem. Right? That's just your normal daily, there's a certain amount of movement we should do in a day and just becomes part of our day, right? Whatever that is for you. And that's, for some people, that's a run commute of 10 miles to work. And you start to adapt and that becomes baseline, right? And I think there becomes a component of this that happens with these people. Say you're running 100 Ks, at some point that becomes kind of, your body just goes, all right, well, this is what we do. This is normal. So now, there's obviously a line here, and 100K is probably the other side of that line, right? But there are many listeners, and certainly I was one of these people who ran every day. So there was probably a period of months and months and months, I don't know how many months it is, where I did not have a day without running. Now, that wasn't a problem. Just like it's not a problem to have a day without walking. So there's certainly a spectrum here, and we need to remember that the body will adapt. So yeah, he obviously adapted pretty well. I mean, that's 100K is a lot though. So there was certainly a competition that was going.
It's like you almost just had a realization now. Your face, you're like, 100 Ks is a lot.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to bring perspective here to people, of the how is this possible physiologically, but then also it is 100Ks. I hate this. It's only a whatever 5K, 10K, whatever, and that's it is 100 kilometers, so it's worthwhile remembering that.
And then on to everyone's favorite topic, shoes. When was the last time we talked about shoes? It's about time, probably. What have you come across in the shoe world?
Actually, a quick shout out. So a couple of episodes coming up. We have some unbelievable guests coming up to talk about footwear and stuff. So do subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I'm not going to spoil who these guests are. We are recording them in the next week, and they'll be released in the coming weeks. They are unbelievable here. So anyway, so this was interesting. Kiprun. Many people would not be familiar with Kiprun. So it is a running brand, and it's owned by Decathlon. And again, American listeners will be like, what is Decathlon? Decathlon is the world's biggest sports retailer. It is a French retailer. That's why you don't know it. They have a cycling team that we talked about last week. They actually Decathlon actually sponsors Jimmy Gressier that we talked about a little before. And they put a big splash out a couple of years ago and started trying to not be seen as this cheap brand and started putting some serious money and development into their super shoes particularly, and their shoes more broadly. And then they've also started a trail team that are pretty high profile, including, and it's predominantly French athletes they've picked at the moment, which makes sense. So probably the most high profile trail athlete they have is Blondini Rondel. And anyway, they're releasing a shoe called the Kip Next Connect, which is the first ever running shoe to track its own wear. So this is built in partnership with Movementa, which integrates the ultralight Solo sensor, SOLLO, directly into between the upper and the midsole. So this sensor weighs around 3 grams, and it doesn't have a power source that it requires. And this measures foam compression and feeds the data straight into the Pacer app, giving it real-time read on your cushioning wear. So it's quite interesting to start to see this. I think we're going to go this way. And I've got a podcast, I don't know when it releases, coming out with that triathlon show. And I talk a little bit about footwear on that. So shout out to Michael, who's a listener of this podcast and was kind enough to have me on his podcast again. And he's a future guest of this podcast. We just need to work out when. But anyway, this in general, the shoe has so the stats here are 53 millimeter heel stack. So that makes it illegal in competition for the elites. Not that it would be. I think it's more of a trainer. But it has a supercritical ATPU foam. So for those not familiar, ATPU is aliphatic TPU. So TPU is a polyurethane compound. So it retains its bounciness of TPU, but it's lighter and more consistent foam. This has better energy return than PIBA, which was the original sort of magic foam that we had. So this is the same foam or a similar foam to what is used in the Puma Fast R3. So this is expected to launch by the end of this year. And it's going to retail at about $220. So it's not super expensive given what it is. I'm quite surprised by that.
I've got a pair of their running shorts actually, and they're super, super comfortable. I wouldn't mind getting a few more. Nice to see their brand going from strength to strength. I might actually approach them for some sponsorship. Might be a good one of the things I'm working on. It might be some good because I see they also sponsor a lot of properties in East Africa, in Kenya particularly. So good to see them developing and getting stronger and stronger. Before we wrap this up and head to the doctor's office, should we quickly touch on the Tour of Flanders? Ronde van Vlaanderen was a massive cycling race on the weekend, one of cycling's monuments. And of course, in the men's race, Tadej Pogacar, this guy is just unbelievable. Won it for the third time. Someone of his stature, I would say, traditionally should not be able to win this race, but he's just phenomenal. He won solo, and then Demi Vollering as well, the European champion, also winning solo. It was quite cool to see her in the last 2 kilometers, knowing she's going to win and really enjoying it, playing to the cameras, taking it in, pointing to her head. She's a big advocate for mental health. So cool to see her doing that. You didn't watch the race, did you? But you caught up on the highlights.
Caught bits and pieces of it. I mean, it's probably big for her as well because she's not from Flanders, she's not Belgian, but the Dutch are very close geographically, and it would be one of the more high profile races for the Dutch as well. So I'm sure she was happy to win it in that respect.
She never won it before. Yeah, it was the first time. Yeah, she wanted this one.
And the team seems to be clicking this year for her, in and around her, and they seem to be doing a really good job for her. So
unbelievable.
I think that's super helpful as well. It was quite interesting to see. I mean, Pogacar's won something like his last 8 classics he's raced. It's insane.
Yeah, insane.
He's won like his last 8 classics, so it's like he's on a ridiculous run. So it's interesting. Maybe it's not 8 classics, maybe it's 8 races. I can't remember where I saw this, but he just keeps winning. This guy is just, it's crazy to think. So is there anything else? We're going to talk about this mess that happened in the men's race, but anything else that you saw there that was interesting, or anything else we should talk about from the race, or is all pretty?
Well, on the men's race, Remco Evenepoel lined up for the first time. He had been training for this since December last year and kept it a secret. And then days before the race revealed that he was doing it on his YouTube channel. And if you watch the video on his YouTube channel, they'd been filming since December, doing recons and everything. And sort of him wearing buffs over his face and trying to hide away and keep it under wraps. And so well done to them for keeping it a secret. And he finished third in his first outing, which he seemed to be very chuffed with, which I think is a very good result for him too. A race like this takes experience, it takes know-how, and it goes close to his house. It's where he grew up. But kudos to him for finishing third, and then second was Mathieu van der Poel. So there was just all the big hitters were there. Wout van Aert, good to see him back. He was fourth. He was on Poggy's wheel when Poggy went and made the decisive move, but sort of just couldn't hold on. And then Mads Pedersen from Little Trek. This guy is unbelievable, man. He finished fifth. He should not be there. He broke his hand early in the season, missed some days on the bike. He subsequently revealed that he fell again days before Flanders on his other hand. He got sick and missed Dwarsdeur Vlaanderen, so just a week before the race. But Mads is just former world champion, unbelievable. For him to be fifth and be there just shows what a talent he is. So it was a really, really good race. But I saw
Well, hang on a second. I think it's interesting that Remco is not talking about it. Like, it strikes me as that guy struggling with pressure. So he doesn't want any pressure around
Good
this, particularly
point.
being a Belgian.
Good,
So
good
it doesn't
point.
disappoint me. Like,
Yes.
it doesn't surprise me that he's done that. I also saw some commentary that there was a TV motorbike in front of Poggy and Machu when Remco was chasing them down, and he didn't have one. And there was some like questions about whether it was impacting the race because they could draft off the bike,
It was
and he couldn't.
100% affecting the race. I commented this on our boys group while watching the race, and my one friend, Jabu, is a massive Poggy fan, and he got upset at me. I said, I'm not saying Remco would win the race. If Remco got back to Poggy and Mathieu, he'd still be dropped, is my belief. But you could clearly see at one point, the TV motorbikes were behind. Remco was about 7 to 10 seconds behind Mathieu and Poggy. And at one point, the TV motorbikes were behind both sets of groups. And then the motorbike in the front group goes in front of Poggy and Mathieu and sits about, I don't know, 10 to 15 meters in front of them. Now, I know from Ironman triathlons that you do get a drafting benefit from that, whereas the TV motorbike stayed behind Remco and he was just about to catch up back to them. And that enabled them to maintain that gap or open the gap slightly. And I mean, this is an ongoing problem in cycling, and I don't know how the UCI is going to fix this problem, but it's something that has to be fixed. You 100% get a drafting benefit from the motorbike TVs.
Yeah, and I was speaking to Christian Blumenfeld about this from triathlon as well. So it's not a problem just in cycling; it's a problem when people are cycling.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, but I saw the chase pack / peloton. So there was a breakaway, from what I understand. The peloton, which was the chase pack, got caught at a train at a crossing, and some of them got through and some of them didn't, which then meant that those people stopped and waited. But there were some people who scooted across, perhaps in a red light, and there's some discussion around, should these people be disqualified? And we saw this a couple of years ago at the OCC by UTMB. We talked a bit about it where they got split by a train. This is a mess, man. Like, UTMB is a big race in the region, but it's still UTMB and it's still not that big compared to cycling and Ronde van Vlaanderen. Like, this is an enormous thing here. This is both foreseeable and avoidable. I can't believe this is happening. Has this sort of thing happened before? Have you seen anything like this before? Or
Yeah, very common. And in previous years, riders have been disqualified for passing when the train light was red already and they just squeezed through. It was funny to see Mikkel Berg, one of Pogacar's teammates, who's an unbelievable rider, was riding on the front for about 100 kilometers. He was on the front of the peloton, and the first half of the peloton got through the train crossing, and the controller sort of went up to him on the motorbike and said, slow down. And he was like, why are you telling me to slow down? And he said, well, you got to wait for the second half of the peloton that's being caught behind the train crossing. But I saw Pogacar talking about this and him saying that they should look at stopping the peloton earlier, knowing when the train crossing is happening and stopping it earlier and in a more organized way, because he at first thought there were protesters on the course or something. There was just chaos and they were stopping and everyone was like, what's going on? And he said it was protesters. But it's actually a good point he makes. I don't know, maybe 500 meters before, a kilometer before, they should sort of have a schedule. And I don't know if Belgium's the same as Switzerland where the train crossings are to the second, but know when the train crossing will be closing and just slow the peloton down in a more organized way. But yeah, this has happened for many years.
Do you slow down the breakaway though?
So traditionally what has happened was if you make it through, you are through and you gain that advantage. So that is a debate that has to happen. Do you stop the breakaway and slow it down and maintain the gap at when the crossing happens, when the crossing closes? The race goes back to having that gap. I have seen that happen before too. Or do you just say, hey, man, you made it through. Well done to you. Today's your lucky day. I don't know.
But then there's a jeopardy aspect of like, now we know when the train's coming. Now we have to make it through. So that's kind of cool as well that the peloton pushes to try and make that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I certainly, I don't think I've talked about this. I'm not sure if I talked about this on the podcast, but I once raced a race east of Melbourne called the Great Train Race, more commonly known as Puffing Billy. And you race against the train, which is called Puffing Billy. And it's I think it was 16 kilometers, 10 miles. And what happens is they play the national anthem, and then the driver of the train is in a pair of running shoes, and he gets up and talks some smack to you, like, I'm going to beat you all. You're all terrible. You're all slow. The gun goes off. He runs to the train and starts the train, and you start running. And there are 3 train crossings. And if you get to a train crossing and it goes down, you have to stop. And if you haven't made it through, there is no way you're beating the train. The whole goal is to beat the actual train to the end. And what happens is he stops and then gets out and runs to the finish line. And so historically, it's been quite a high profile thing, and people have like oiled the tracks to slow it going up some of the hills, and people have got their family to get on the train and stop it, like get out the train and to slow it down, which is quite interesting. And I raced it, and I'd raced with a mate of mine. He lived nearby, so we stopped at his house. Went to the thing, and we jogged down to the start line, and he'd never beaten it, and it was part of my long run. That day, I was running. The plan was, and you're not meant to run back from there. They discourage it, but it was a big group of us. We're like, no, we're doing this. And I jogged to the start line or walked to the start line and then had to run it. And I was like, oh, it's kind of a long run and you'll have to run back. And it was going to end up being like, 30 something kilometers, like 20 something miles. And I was like, I got to beat this thing. And my mate got caught at the second stop, and I felt so bad because I was with him and he hadn't ever beaten it. And I beat the train on my first time, and I felt so bad. But it was awesome. It was such fun. It was one of my favorite races because you heard the train, you hear the toot toot as you get into the thing. You're like, oh no, and you like pick it up. It felt like being chased by like a dinosaur because it's quite green and ferny in the space as well. So it was fun.
I love that. We have that here as well. I grew up with something similar as well, the Great Train Race. So in my town, we from here to Lurie, which is sort of a town, I don't know, 40 k's away, and it's a relay race. You do it in teams of relay racing the train, and it was one of my best days ever because I think you get to the finish and then you take the train back, is if memory serves correctly. But yeah, that was absolutely for a kid. I mean, what a way to get into exercise and fall in love with running and exercise, and trains are going to get your attention as a kid. Great concept.
For the record, that the last 16 kilometers, like 10 miles home, really rough, real rough. I like ran that 10 miles there way too hard. So yeah, not a good way to do a long run.
Anyone in the doctor's office this week?
Yeah, it's full, mate. We got your mate, Letsile Tebogo.
Another Botswanan.
Another Botswana from the Botswana Athletics Championships. He was in the men's 100-meter heats, and he had a bit of an issue. So there's some varying reports here. I couldn't find the video, but apparently there's a video of it. He was testing starting blocks before the heats when he slipped and suffered a pretty bad fall, apparently. Apparently carried off the track, but it's hard to understand what's going on. But anyway, the problem here is that Botswana hosts the World Relays in a month, and he's been very vocal, telling the Americans to come out and like face us and all that stuff. And yeah, he may not be ready for that if it's in a month, depending on what he's done. And then obviously the Diamond League is mid-May, as you already alluded to. So I don't think he needs to be ready for the start of the Diamond League, but it's more about World Relays and does this impact the rest of his year for other reasons, the ultimate championships he has this year, whether he cares about that or not in the athletics, etc.
And then Justin Riele crashed out of Ironman 70.3 Oceanside. I think I saw him on the bike crashing quite early into the race.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, apparently. I didn't realize how bad it was. But firstly, it was cool to see all the other pros reaching out, like on it and commenting on his Instagram, like, get well or whatever. But he said his helmet saved him. He had a pretty bad crash. So he fractured his scapula, which is his shoulder blade, and needed surgery in a plate. And so we sort of talked a bit about this with Hayden Wild, and I think other times before as well. He also broke his collarbone, his clavicle. So, yeah, I mean, he needs a lot of rehab on that shoulder post the surgery, because to do surgery on it, you actually have to like cut some muscles and stuff. So for the shoulder blade, so it's pretty bad. But I mean, I was pretty skeptical of Hayden Wild, and he was back late last year racing well. Yeah. So like, I don't want to talk too much smack about this because obviously these elite guys have got great healing capacity because they've got a lot of surplus energy that they're used to using to train now that can be devoted to healing. So they do have a good capacity to heal, but it's just pretty brutal. So best wishes to Justin there as well.
Before we go, I'm glad we do have some seen on social this week. This is content we see on social media that we might just have to fact check because it isn't always perfectly accurate.
Yeah, context, again, about being better, getting it right, not being right. But so the URC is a rugby competition, which the South African teams play in. Scottish teams
loving it. I've been getting into it so much. I've been watching, not all, but the last few weeks, Stormers, Bulls, some Sharks games, so I've been loving it.
Yeah, it's good. It's good quality product. So anyway, the URC rugby channel put out, like on social, put out something. And basically they showed, so these guys all wear GPS units, right? And it's from the teams to track what they're doing. And now they're being provided to some of the broadcasters so you can see distance traveled and speed and those sort of things. The problem is they give instantaneous speeds, right? How many kilometers an hour here these guys run. And the comment was put out, and it shows us data in the video, and it's a cool video, and it's cool to see the speeds, right? And basically they say, this guy was within 8 miles an hour of Usain Bolt. Now, the video's in kilometers, so you can tell the social guys going, well, how do we make this guy sound fast? It's like, well, let's change it to miles so it's closer. But but also 8 miles an hour is not close. Like
No.
that ain't close. Is the first thing. There are also instantaneous speeds, and instantaneous speed is largely irrelevant because there's a bit of like data noise here, but also like just because you hit that speed for 1 second doesn't mean you can hold it. And a big part, even in the 100 meters, is speed endurance. So how long can you hold on to your top speed? But also, like, just for context here, as having worked in both track and rugby settings, I promise you, this guy's faster than Usain Bolt on the field in a match, just not on the track. So it reminds me of a question that Michael Jordan was famously asked. They said, would you guys have beaten the Golden State Warriors? And he said, yeah, we'd probably beat them, but it'd be close because most of us are in our 50s now. So like it made me like think that like on a track now, I think Usain might even beat this guy or might consider himself able to beat this guy. So
Why would
yeah,
this guy beat him on a field though?
because it's different. It's complete. Like your speed in a match is completely different. You're running with a ball for the first part, and that's actually quite hard. One of the drills I used to do with guys, which is quite hard, is like running with two balls because you can't use your arms for speed. That's a big part of it. It's also different. You're interacting with a different surface in different footwear, and you're not running in a straight line, right? You're changing directions and those sort of things. So there are certainly, you see these guys who are very quick on the field, and it doesn't always translate to the track. And then similar, they're often fast on the track. They're not slow, but there are, I mean, rugby fast, like some of the fastest people in rugby are like 10-9 runners, right? Now 10-9, 10-9-8, 9-5, right? So it's worthwhile considering that, a second over the 100 meters is roughly 10 meters. So roughly 10% of the race. You aren't even in the frame when Usain finishes. Like
crazy.
So let's just remember, like there are levels to the game, and like Usain's the end boss.
Anything else seen on social this week?
Yeah, so a British sprinter called Adam Gemelli retired and is now coaching. He's an ex-British sprinter, and I saw somebody, and I'm not going to call this person out, that he was ruined by British athletics coaches. Another runner who's ruined by British athletics coaches. He never really reached his potential, and it's an interesting thought. The person who commented this is not uninformed and has some knowledge in the area, so maybe they're right. But I just started looking at this. So this is basically based off his junior time. So he ran 10.2 as a 17-year-old without any real serious training. And so this guy's thought was, hey, at 10.2, you run 10.2 when you're 17 without much training, you should be very good. You should get better by a lot. Now, he ran then 10.05 as an 18-year-old, obviously having trained quite a bit. And it is worth remembering, when you start training, you've got a steep improvement, and that does plateau out, right? You get newbie gains, right? In anything you do, gym, running, cycling, all of it, right? You get a steep improvement, and that starts to plateau out as the adaptations happen. Similarly, I would say that is true as you near the limits of human performance, right? It gets harder and harder to get to those top couple of percentages, right, of your ability and the human race's ability as well, right? So we've sort of talked about this a little bit with people like Cooper Lutgenhouse, Gout, and maybe Cam Myers from Australia as well. But this guy only improved about 0.8 seconds with 3 years of training, right? He ran 9.97 ultimately as his PB. But like, you may never progress much beyond your ability at 17 to 18 years old, particularly as a man, because particularly in these speed power sports or more speed power sports. So again, it's harder to gain small margins as you get closer to the ceiling, both of the human race and that. And then again, at elite levels, you need many things to go your way. You need to be healthy, have good periods of training, and some of that's to do with coaching, to be honest. But then also, you might need the right race for it. Say in an 800 or 1500 meters, you need the right race dynamics as well for you to run fast. But then I looked it up. Only 217 people, according to Wikipedia, have run under 10 seconds ever.
Wow.
Now,
in the history of the earth. Wow.
Yeah, I think it's probably more than this. I think it's probably like, there's probably some school kids that we don't know about, but like, that's what your Wikipedia says. So like, the point is, it's not going to be 200,000. It's going to be maybe 500 or whatever, right? It's not going to be, it's not going to be a magnitude more. It might be a multiple of. Adam was apparently the 101st person to do it. So like the point I'm making here is like, I'm not convinced this guy didn't achieve his potential.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting.
It's
I've seen
we
this
just
in
think it's
cycling a lot where I see a young person, 16, 17, they blow up the junior ranks and you're like, this person's going to win the Tour de France one day. And all they become is a really good domestic who can ride on the front for 100 kilometers. Not many people can do that in the world, but they can't go and win race after race. And I used to think something went wrong when I was younger in that person's trajectory. Now that I've been in the sport for 15 years and I've seen it time and time and time and time again, I'm just of the belief that that is just that person's trajectory now. The fact that we see it so often, and they maybe, I don't want to use this term, peak too soon, but there were only so many gains to be made. And from a very early age, they were very close to their ceiling already.
yeah, and sometimes like there's just a luck factor to this. There's some of it is just about who's there on the day. Like, what if Poggy falls in a race, then you win it, then all of a sudden, oh yeah, well you've been successful because you won a race.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you know, someone we both know personally, Theo Geoghegan-Hart, he won the Giro d'Italia. Like something goes wrong, he doesn't win that race, and subsequently people might be saying, "Oh, Teo's struggling." It's like, well, he had a bad crash and he's coming back from the crash still. Like he's still getting it right. Like so, it circumstance is so hard.
Yeah. No, true. Well, thanks for finding that. Very interesting discussion. What are we watching this weekend?
Mate, I haven't looked at what's coming on this weekend. What are you watching? You said Paris-Roubaix here.
Paris-Roubaix, Hull of the North.
Guess I'm watching that.
Of course. Massive Paris-Roubaix, and then the Premier League is back. Unfortunately, Man United is only playing on Monday night again. I think there's a limit to how many Monday night games you can play. It's something like 5 per season, and I think Man United's on 8 or something. So I don't know what the hell is going on with the Premier League and the disrespect for Manchester United putting the games on Monday night now. But yeah, Premier League.
Is it disrespect, or does it mean that they get to be watched, mate?
Oh, Monday night's not high ratings, but maybe that's because it's not high ratings, they put a big club there knowing that the games will get watched and sacrificing Man United. But who the hell wants to watch your team on a Monday night, man? I want to chill out on the weekend and watch my team. Anyway, let's get out of here. Great episode. Thanks so much for putting this together, David. Big thank you to Stride and Precision Fuel and Hydration for supporting us in this. Thank you to you if you've subscribed, if you've shared this podcast. Quick shout out right at the end. Let's see if you listen to the end. To Abelang, one of our listeners. Last week, I was at a restaurant overlooking the ocean, and this informal run that one of our other listeners, Stephen Lancaster, put together came by. So Abelang running past, and I shouted at him, "Hey, Abby," and he had earphones in, and he said to me, he shouted back at me, "I'm listening to you on the podcast right now." And he ran a just informal marathon on Easter Saturday, I think it was. Shout out to him. Yeah. Thanks so much for putting this together, David. We publish a new episode every single Friday. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, mate. Talk soon.